Hey, folks, welcome. I'm excited to connect with Afdhel Aziz today. He is what I regard as a man on purpose, a man who has taken many creative, entrepreneurial, economic, even political risks to help individuals and companies discover what they're really all about. And he brings this deep background, both in personal purpose, but also brands, like helping brands connect with their own purpose, and from that place connect with their communities, their customers. So it's a mix of personal, individual, organizational, and I'm hoping at some point we'll get to touch a little bit on purpose of society and the roles that purposeful organizations get to play in creating that. So with that, welcome, Afdel.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks for having me. And right back at you. I'm a huge fan of your work. It's been very influential to me. I think you're one of the leading thinkers in the space, and I always enjoy our conversations. So delighted to have one on the record where we can talk about all the stuff we usually talk about in private.
Amen. Yeah. Well, let's do that. So, your journey is unique. I would love just to hear about what it was like to be you as a little boy and how you've kind of grown into this very prolific, iconic role as like a purpose beacon. And what were the kind of the key moments of your purpose journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm 50 years old, and so that means I was born in the 70s. I was born in Sri Lanka, this beautiful little island off the south coast of India. And I grew up in a civil war. Sri Lanka had a 30-year civil war, which I experienced growing up as a child. I think that's a crucible moment, where you actually grow up in a place, in a society with a lot of conflict and violence and danger. And really, I was able to escape that thanks to the grace of my parents who
Mm.
stash money away and help me go and study in the United Kingdom in the UK. I left when I was 18 years old to go and do a degree in English literature, which fed into my lifelong love of storytelling and creativity. I did a master's in media and communications, which also fed into that. And then I had to get a job, and I was a skinny brown kid with a strange name, whom nobody wanted to give a work permit to be a journalist or a writer or any of that stuff. So by chance, I found a Procter and Gamble summer internship program, and I applied for it, and I got in. And I had never
Mhm.
really considered marketing as a career, but it turned out to be something that I was actually quite passionate about, and I did it for 20 years at companies like Procter and Gamble in the UK and Nokia, back when there was a giant mobile phone company called Nokia. I moved to New York in 2007 after I met my wife, and I worked in Heineken and Absolute Vodka, super fun brands, doing really cool things. My passion
Mhm.
was for pop culture,
Mhm.
and so my purpose was really in helping these brands connect with pop culture in
Mhm.
authentic and
Mhm.
meaningful ways. And I did hundreds of music partnerships with the likes of Lady Gaga or Dead Mouse, or music festivals like Coachella. I was very privileged to be a kid with a passion for pop culture who got to live out his wildest dreams.
Mhm.
To see incredible musicians play up close, to create partnerships with them, to experience, really to go inside the bubble, as I call it. But then something weird happened where the cool stopped being cool.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
had to go and find something else to fuel my purpose. And it was at that moment that, I had met my dear friend and co-author and now business partner, Bobby Jones, who was also a fellow marketer and fellow dad, questioning his purpose in business and culture.
Yeah.
And so we went on the journey to write a book called Good is the New Cool. That came out in 2016. That was about the topic of brand purpose, though nobody
Mhm.
called it that at the time. The message of the book was really simple. It was said to brands, you need to think about doing good like you think about being cool, hence the title. And that really is what has led to Fast forward 7 years later, us, setting up Conspiracy of Love, which is the purpose consultancy that now works with companies like the Gap or Sephora or Coca-Cola around helping them find purpose at an
Mhm.
organizational level, and then also helping their employees and leaders find purpose, which is something I'm really passionate about, and which is the subject of the
Mhm.
book that we have coming out on October 29th as well.
Wow. Yeah. That is quite the journey. And I think one most folks can relate to, it's kind of a David Brooks second mountain kind of thing, right? First
Yeah.
mountain, go do a bunch of cool resume, awesome things, like fulfill all the passions. But then at some point, like, I'm setting an example for little kids. Do I want to be like just doing the things that I've always done, or do I want to show them kind of what the next version of me is?
Yeah.
And I'm curious that you and Bobby kind of have that kind of generational conversation. Is this
Oh
was yours?
yeah. In fact, in this third book, the first third of it is actually our journey, us
Hmm.
sharing our journey in a very vulnerable and open way, because we wanted to show everybody, like, anybody can find purpose. If the two of us could do it after 20 years in corporate life and being
Hmm.
parents
Yeah.
and find meaning and, be successful, living a life of purpose, we wanted to share our codes, as we say, with everybody, and really it was, you talked about those crucible moments. One of them was becoming a father to my son. He's 10 years old now. His name is Nuri. He's awesome. And having that moment, as all parents do, where you realize you are no longer the most important thing in life. There's somebody else who is.
Yeah.
And really starting to think about the role model you are setting for him,
Yeah.
but also the world you're creating for
Yeah.
them, and really starting to think about whether your actions had any net positive impact in the world.
Yeah.
And especially now with things like climate change, like there's a lot of parents, I think, who are sitting there going, wait a minute, am I, in my desire to provide a better life for my children and my family,
Hmm.
by working hard and earning money, am I also accidentally causing the shredding
Hmm.
of the world and
Yeah.
society that we're part of? And I think it's a dawning realization that can lead to guilt and shame.
Hmm.
Certainly, those were emotions I felt, where I thought, wait a minute, I've been, marketing all these products to people to buy more stuff, and, utilizing resources and putting plastic and waste into the world. Like, wait a minute,
Hmm.
have I actually been, accidentally contributing to, the decline of the society and civilization he's about to inherit? And my advice is, if you feel that guilt and shame, do something about it. Go
Yeah.
figure out what it is you can change in your life, in your work, to have a net positive impact on the world. And it doesn't need to be giant and world changing. It could be a net positive impact on one person or, one team. But it's just always thinking about, how you leave the world slightly better than you found it. That's what
Hmm.
we hope people reading this book, The Good is a New Cool Guide to, Personal Purpose, will find a path towards doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's very real right now, especially if, for folks our age, like midlife, our security blanket is, fairly well, woven in a sense. We can take risks, and we are entering in probably, the next couple decades of our most productive, uh, you know, yeah, just like we can do a lot. Like, and obviously it's true for folks younger as well. Like, making a couple changes now can have a massive impact, like absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Because the last thing we want is like, there's this great cartoon article where like the kid has got an air, like scuba type gear on. It's a completely desolate planet, and his parent gives him, oh, well, here's your inheritance. And it's just a stack of cash. Like, there's no oxygen, there's no plants, there's
Yeah.
no life. Money's not going to solve this one. Like, this
Yeah.
is something that we actually have to create a brand new society for.
Yeah. I'll 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
It annoys the hell out of me when people are like, well, the children are going to save us. The next generation is going to save us. I was like, no, that's not their job. Our job is to save them.
Yeah.
Is for us to get involved right now and do something, um there is data that shows that Gen Alpha, which is my son's
Mhm.
generation, they think their number one job is to save the planet.
Mhm.
Can you think about the amount of pressure that
Yeah.
puts on an 8-year-old to think
Mhm.
that their job is to save an entire planet or civilization?
Yeah.
It's crushing, And so that's where, at the same time, I think what we want to point out in this book is that if you want to do something good, you don't have to quit your job and go and dig wells in the Sahara.
No.
Like, actually, you are way more valuable exactly where you are
Mhm.
in your job, in a company, with your resources and your experience and your networks. It's more about bringing purpose and meaning into your existing role
Mhm.
than trying to leave and start from scratch again, where you will be starting at the bottom, And so
Yeah.
it's really about what we call, as our friend True Pettigrew says, getting in alignment with your assignment. It's like saying,
Mhm.
okay, here's where I am right now. I have the virtues of the safety blanket, as you call it, with my
Mhm.
salary and paycheck and benefits. But how do I now use the equity that's in this bank account that I have
Right.
to spend it wisely in places that do more positive
Mm.
good in the world?
Well, before we get to kind of individual career purpose, I'm curious if you might, because I know you spend a lot of time in organizations and helping them align with their assignment. What is the role that a purposeful organization can have in society? I mean, obviously we need it because
Yeah.
so many aspects of society are breaking down, but we've got organizations that seem to be thriving. How do you see purposeful organizations being a part of this future?
Yeah, it's something I've spent a decade studying and advising these companies, and it's a topic that comes first of all loaded with a lot of cynicism, right? And I understand why. There's been 400 years of capitalism, which
Mhm.
have created incredible amounts of damage to society and to the planet. It's made a very small number of people very rich, and it's caused great income inequality and climate devastation for the rest of us. So there's a certain portion of the population who start laughing or
Yeah.
sneering when you talk about the idea of a company having a higher order purpose, and um, for anyone who wants to really have their eyes open, I highly recommend this documentary called The Corporation,
Gosh.
which is an incredible documentary. There's a
Yeah.
sequel as well, both great, and it basically makes the analogy that a corporation is a sociopath. If a corporation was a human being, it would be a sociopath, i.e., lacking remorse, lacking compassion, lacking the ability to make any
Mhm.
decisions that weren't in its own best interest. And it's because of the structure of capitalism.
Mhm.
It's an abdication of responsibility. Oh, we have shareholders. We need to report to them. Well, who are the shareholders reporting into? Oh, we don't
Mhm.
know. The market. Okay, well, who's the market reporting into? I don't know. And so it kind of just goes up the ladder where you can have everybody from employees to leaders to investors to everybody kind of acting blindly in things that are oftentimes against their own self-interest
Oh, absolutely.
in service of some nebulous idea like profit, which is what everybody's chasing. And so the trick is not to ignore that
Mhm.
instinct. The trick is to harness it, and increasingly at Conspiracy of Love, we talk about this idea of purposeful growth.
Mhm.
And my dear friends and wonderful managing partners, Helen Trickey and Philip Recker, are writing their own book about this topic. You need to have them on when their book comes out.
Yeah.
And it's really this simple idea, which is saying, listen, we think in the 21st century, the best way for companies to grow is by solving societal and environmental problems, as opposed to accidentally causing societal
Causing
and
more, right?
environmental problems. And it's incredibly complex and it's not
Yeah.
simplistic at all, right? But
Yeah.
our thesis going in at companies at Conspiracy of Love is saying, if we can do three things, if we can, first of all, articulate a clear purpose, vision, and values, which is the
Mhm.
North
Mhm.
Star of any company,
Mhm.
to really help understand what makes them special, what their superpowers are, and where they can, really focus. That's job number one.
Hmm.
Job number two is then really identifying um, ways for their employees and leaders to find their own personal purpose and connect it to that of the company.
Yeah.
That's the alignment with the assignment part, which most
Hmm.
companies skip over and forget.
Yeah. They
That
don't do
that's
it.
they won't
Yeah.
they won't even do it. And then that's when it rings inauthentically, or it's a little bit hollow. It
Hmm.
becomes performative. That's what this third book is about. We've now written three books. The first book was on brand purpose. The second book was about organizational purpose. And the third book is about individual purpose. And they're designed to be read as a trilogy. It's almost
Hmm.
like interlocking rings
Hmm.
that need to be, established. But if you can find that powerful spark where people are inspired to come to work and see how their work has meaning beyond the quarterly profit goal, and that in itself leads to incredible benefits. It leads to, as you pointed out in Science of Purpose, your website, which has so many great details: engagement, motivation, physiological, psychological, spiritual health. Like
Everything.
it's incredible. It's like a silver
Yeah.
bullet, right?
Yeah.
um and then the third part is harnessing that energy that is created to channel it into what we call creating with purpose, which is really the external manifestation of it. How do companies create new products and services, new business models, new platforms that solve problems in society whilst also driving financial profitability as
Mhm.
well? So that's the theory of change that we're engaged on. And the most complex of those actually is the employee and individual level. And
Mhm.
that's why this is the third book. It's taken us, 7 years to write it because it is the most complex topic, but we wanted to simplify and
Yeah.
distill it down so that anybody could understand it.
Well, it's awesome, and I love how you've framed each level as, of altitude in terms of purpose, like the brand, the organization, and the employee, and it's been my experience too. Like organizations and leaders can be like, oh wow, I've got a purpose, or I'm connected to this thing, and we're making an impact. But then for some reason, it's like like they stroke out or something. Like, wait, our employees have purposes too? Like, cannot compute. But like, that's the key. Like, if you can get them to connect with their purpose, then they have that muscle memory,
Yeah.
and they understand how to attach themselves to larger forms of meaning.
Hmm.
But like, they just like skip over that. Like, oh, well, now that we have the purpose, it goes strategy, objectives, performance. But no, you got to bring the hearts in too. And I'm so happy that your book and your work is doing this at scale and like helping organizations activate this, because Lord knows we need it yesterday. So thank you. Thank you to
My
your whole
my
team.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, we've talked a little bit about the role that organizations can play, and like how that this kind of theory of change, these interlocking spheres work together. But so, like, once a company comes online with their purpose, uh, they have the epiphany, like, oh wow, our employees have purpose, and we can help them connect to it. Like, then what do companies do? So they've got the hearts in the room, they've got clarity, alignment. Now, how do companies then create, a more purposeful, thriving future? What happens then?
Yeah. It's a great question. So it's really, think about it almost like head, heart, hands, right? So you
Hmm.
have to have the strategic clarity. You need to light a fire in people's hearts, and then you got to
Hmm.
channel that energy into different
Hmm.
places, right? And so the first thing to acknowledge is that different employees will have different levels of engagement
Hmm.
of purpose inside the company,
Right.
right? In the book, we make the metaphor that your own personal purpose is like a river with many streams flowing into it. It could be your family, your faith, your neighborhood, your community, your country. Patriotism is a form of purpose, right?
Mhm.
It could be your job, but everybody's streams are different.
Right.
For some people, they may get zero purpose from their job. They get
Mm.
it from somewhere else. They get it from their family. They get it from their community, their tribe, whatever that is. And so it's a really about creating a spectrum of engagement inside the companies where people can kind of choose your own adventure depending on how deep they want to get into it. So at the very simplest level, volunteering and fundraising.
Hmm.
Most companies these days have, time for their employees to go volunteer or matched fundraising. That's the simplest iteration of saying, hey, you tell us what you're passionate about, whether it's animal welfare or mental health or whatever.
Hmm.
Go go spend some time with that. And that could be it for that employee.
Hmm.
Other people might want to get a little bit more engaged and they might be saying, hey, I want to, join an ERG, an employee resource
Hmm.
group, where I'm meeting now with other employees who find common meaning around this thing, whether it's a shared identity or a shared passion or whatever that is.
Hmm.
They find community and connection as well. Um, then there might be others who say, I've now found this newfound passion within me. I want to make this part of my career. And that's where, now putting it into career planning and saying, okay,
Hmm.
you're passionate about sustainability. Great. Okay, let's figure out how in 18 months we get you a role in our sustainability team or, our inclusion team or something
Hmm.
else.
Hmm.
Now you're getting that retention that
Yeah.
the employee doesn't need to leave the company to find their purpose.
Yeah.
They can stay there. And at the very top of the pyramid is innovation. Like if you can find employees who have ideas about how to make the company better,
Hmm.
by reaching out to underserved communities or by innovating new processes or technologies, that is gold. That is absolute gold for companies to harness as well. So it's really just saying, meet them where they are, design according to what you
Hmm.
think their needs are, make it super clear to them that they can plug in at all these different, stages. And that's how you can get the best out of everybody, inside
Yeah.
the company.
I love it. And I also love how you frame those avenues because a lot of companies are still getting to that place of table stakes around volunteering, ERGs. But then after that, like once folks feel like they have some self expression, you're absolutely right. There is this pot of gold that exists, and um, everybody has it that I've experienced. Like like you led this work with a bunch of different folks. It's like there's nobody's like, oh, I just don't have any purpose. Like no, it's there. They do the work. It's there. And then if they have an employer who's like, well, let's help you purpose path this into your future here, then that's where the like you said the innovation.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is like I know that all the executives are smart and all that, but all of these employees are reading the same news, reading the same, climate projections, reading the same, political polls. So their context for innovation and creativity is, we like that's where we get that beautiful world because they're not going to create something that like destroys the planet that makes the world more hateful and ignorant. They're gonna create things within the company that actually create that world, and that's where like I'm just so happy that you're doing this work and making this available because I trust people and I know you do too. Like when they have the data and they have their hearts, they're going to create some beautiful stuff that we've never even heard of.
Yeah.
Like,
100%. I think
yeah.
so. And that's where, I think these generations are different to our parents' generations,
Oh,
who
yeah.
didn't have that expectation, that they'd wait until they retired to do something positive or give back. And these guys are like, no, I want to do that now.
Now,
I
like
want to
what
do it right
future?
now.
If we don't do it
Yeah.
now, there's not going to be
There's not
any.
gonna be a future, for me to inherit, quote unquote, so let's start now. And I've loved your work on kind of culture and society as well. And I think look, we are in the United States in August 13th, 2024 right now, probably the most polarized and divisive time that
Mhm.
we've lived in since yesterday, because it keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
It seems like, right? And so I want to
Mhm.
address this as well because I think there's some misconceptions around purpose that are worth addressing as well. I think in that first wave of purpose, in back in 2016, 2017, brands went political,
Mhm.
right? They misunderstood purpose as activism.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's one of the principles in our second book, about conscious business, where we say purpose doesn't have to be political,
Hmm.
right? There are a handful of brands who can be activist. Patagonia can be an activist brand. Ben and Jerry's can be an activist brand.
Right.
But that model comes with a lot of stress, and it comes
Hmm.
with a lot of backlash,
Yeah.
as brands have found out, and we really say, look at the data which shows the things that everybody wants,
Mm.
no matter which side of the political divide they are.
Yeah.
Everybody wants better opportunities for their kids, safer neighborhoods,
Hmm.
clean air. So focus on that,
Yeah.
and don't think you have to adopt the language of activism,
Hmm.
to shout your values from the rooftop. Because, by the way, you're also going to get attacked by people who will accuse you of being inauthentic
Hmm.
and fake and, just greenwashing or purpose washing. And so it's really about understanding the natural areas of benefit that your product or service can align itself to, finding ways to do that in ways that don't antagonize half the population
Right.
of the country, and also, by the way, half the population of your employee base, right? As you keep pointing out, the workplace is one of the few unsegregated places,
Hmm.
and the last thing any leader needs is, half their employee base at war with the other half.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so taking some time to really think about common ground and finding those
Hmm.
places where everybody's like, yeah, we all agree this is the right thing to do, right? And we
Hmm.
all agree that this is the common solution.
Yeah.
That's where I'd like to see more companies expend their energy. And I think that's what they're realizing. You'll notice in this political cycle, brands are now very quiet. They're not
Hmm.
as out there,
Hmm.
aligning themselves with one candidate or another. And I think they're realizing the downfall of doing that. And I think this is a maturing, of
Yeah.
purpose, where they're realizing that, it's not about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk. And there are things that you can find that don't get you into hot water as well.
Yeah. And that's what people are craving. I mean, employees, customers, investors. I mean, turns out we all pretty much want the same things. And if a safe place like a workplace where we've got a lot of trust and we spend a lot of time can create these opportunities for employee engagement, for customer experience that meets core human needs across the spectrum,
Yeah.
it essentially becomes a church. We're like, oh, okay, regardless of how you vote, like we can still come together and get this thing done. Pay people more,
Yeah.
have a more sustainable future,
Yeah.
um, and not have to politicize every
Well, it's
thing.
funny you brought up the church metaphor. Is it a church? I'm not sure if it's a church, but I'll tell you one realization I had is that, and this goes back to, like, growing up in Sri Lanka in a civil war where parts of the population hated each other on the basis of their ethnicity,
Mhm,
right? And around the world, we have conflicts where people hate each other on the basis of their religion.
mhm,
And in America, we have a situation where people hate each other on the basis of their political affiliation.
mhm.
And I can't hate anyone because they're a Republican. That
Yeah,
would be like me saying I hate you because you're a Hindu, or, I can't do that.
yeah,
Um, I can disagree with you in terms of, the way you believe things should be done, or I believe things should be done. But I can also find common ground on things that we both agree, um, we can work on together.
mhm,
And we're in this system which is so ginned up to cause polarization.
yeah,
Like, literally, this is now speaking to, like, the marketers in your audience. Your advertising dollars are funding news engines driven by
mhm,
clicks and views, and those clicks and views are driven by conflict.
yeah,
So we are now all caught up in this engine
mm,
where we're glued to our social media, we're glued to the news cycles, which, it's just like the unconscious capitalism system that we're caught up in. We're caught up in this unconscious polarization system, which pits us against each
I
other.
know,
And
nuts.
we have a duty to really be careful about how the resources of these corporations are causing this system. And so I was trying to write a piece called "I'm Declaring a War on Polarization" as a
Do
joke
it.
title. As a joke title, but I'm saying I'm not gonna hate anybody anymore.
Uh,
I don't have the energy to hate anybody anymore.
I know.
I'll respectfully disagree with you, but I'm much more interested in figuring out the things you and I have in common that we
Yeah.
can work on together.
Amen. Um, Reminds me yesterday I was saw this VW and it had this old I remember these bumper stickers from let's say the 80s or 90s, but it was like the earth is a co-op. And I think
Mm,
that might have been just like, hippie talk back then. But I think now we're all saying like more hate, more division. Like we've got to figure this out together. There's
yeah,
no escape. We can't just go to Europe because we've got Putin and their right wing nationalism stuff. But there's no place to hide. We
yeah,
can't leave.
yeah,
You know, Musk's not going to have Mars ready for us for another 20 years. So
yeah, yeah. I call it like we got to practice spaceship thinking.
yeah,
This Earth is a spaceship,
yeah,
and there's no away to throw things through. Like you don't throw stuff away, and we got to figure this out together, how to live on this spaceship. And if
yeah.
we can come up with, going back to capitalism, right?
Mhm,
a, a system where you keep the best of it, the innovation, the risk taking, the scalability,
mhm,
and remove the worst of it, the inequality, the corruption, the greed, the
mhm.
externalities, and really think about a system which is like a spaceship, which is regenerative and circular and decarbonized and
Mhm,
inclusive. There is a path forward, and we're going to have 10 billion people on the planet by 2050. We're going to have to find a way to figure out how to feed, clothe, educate
mhm,
them, all of
mhm,
that stuff. And so, what we want to help companies do is find ways to win that future. And the way to do that now
mhm,
is through purpose,
mhm.
both organizational and personal as well.
Amen. Amen. Um, so I want to see if we can drop this down to another altitude, like just your purpose,
Yeah.
because I know that you have this big planetary mind, this very practical practice that helps organizations thrive, and then what I'm guessing is like a big mission inside of you that's like bringing this not just to organizations, but to employee bases and customer relationships. So, as your purpose has matured over the last, say, decade or so, I'm curious, like, what are the words you would give to put to it now? Because I know mine
Yeah.
shifts too. I'm curious what
Oh,
yours are.
it's a great question, and it's something we talk about in the book. Bobby and I were blessed to meet a gentleman called True Pettigrew, who is, shout out to True. He is a coach, mentor, teacher, dispenser of wisdom,
Mhm,
and we met him when we had finished writing the book, the first book, Good as a New Cool, about meaningful marketing, and had met all these people who'd found purpose.
mhm,
That's who we featured in our books, and we were like, wait a minute, we haven't found our purpose. Like, how do we do
mhm,
that? And True had invented a wonderfully simple methodology called GPS to Purpose,
right,
which asks three questions: what are your gifts? Like, what are your superpowers? What are your passions? What are the problems you're passionate about fixing in the world? And who can you be of service to with your
mhm,
gifts and passions? And the part of the reason that we wanted to write this book was to take that message of GPS and that framework to the world.
mhm,
It's something that we have now used internally at so many of the companies that we advise, at Sephora, at Microsoft,
mhm,
at all these other companies, to help employees find it. And we think it's too good to just be inside businesses. And
mhm,
so back when we did that, back in 2016, the realization that I had was that I had a gift for storytelling. Um, I was passionate about this idea of business as a force for good, which I had kind of newly discovered,
Mhm.
and kind of was as obsessed with it as I was obsessed with pop culture.
Mhm.
And I could be of service to people who um wanted to learn about it and wanted to kind of bring it to life, you know. And so I articulated my purpose statement back then very simply as, you know, my purpose is to inspire purpose in people and organizations.
Mhm.
And when I first wrote it down, I was somewhat confused. I was like, that's very secular. How can my purpose be about purpose? Like, it just seemed very weird, you know.
Yeah.
But now looking back, after 7 years, I see how much that clarity has driven everything I do, you know. And so the books that I write with Bobby and the keynote speeches I give are about educating people about this topic and introducing them to it. The consultancy, Conspiracy of Love, is about activating it
Mhm.
inside organizations, you
Mhm.
know. Um, Even writing for Forbes, which I do, is about shining a light on purpose driven entrepreneurs and companies and unpacking how they do it. And so it's all connected against this purpose. And it's been an incredible journey. And in some ways, this third book is almost the end of a trilogy that we've
Yeah.
been working on, you know, and exploring this topic in all of its different avenues. Um, and it really kind of has helped me get personal clarity in life and focus
Mhm.
and create this incredibly meaningful world and journey that I've had so far. But it's changing. My purpose is
Mhm.
changing, you know, and this is where I work with another wonderful coach, Kirk Souder. Shout out to Kirk, who at the age of 50, you start to think about, you know, what you want to do with the remaining time you have on this planet,
Yeah.
right? And Kirk's work is really about um, the metaphor is very simple. You know, he says you have um, imagine you have your ego and your authentic self in a car, and your ego is in the driving seat, and your authentic self is in the passenger seat of the car.
Mhm.
That's how most of us go through life.
Right.
And his practice is about switching those things and
Mhm.
saying, okay, what happens if your authentic self is in the driving seat and your ego is in the passenger seat, doing what egos should do, which
Right.
is
Right.
to protect you and to, you know, look out for things and, you know, watch for danger. But it's not dictating the direction that you're going in, you know? And
Right.
so that work really revealed to me that I wanted to be creative,
Mhm.
you know, and I wanted to be, and this is a big word for me to say out loud, an artist.
Mhm.
I really wanted to spend the rest of my life making things. And that was a big epiphany for me, you know,
Yeah.
where um I then realized that what was really sparking my interest was creativity and storytelling. Going back to storytelling, using that gift, you know, but now doing it um in service of a better future, you know? And so that's the shift that's taking place. I've directed my own documentary film that came out a couple of years ago. Started directing a TV show, both in native Sri Lanka,
Mm.
which incidentally was me finding purpose and meaning in helping the country of my birth.
Mhm.
That's another layer which I didn't even realize until I'd, you know, finished doing those projects, you know.
Mhm.
And I'm slowly coming to terms with the imposter syndrome of calling myself creative, you
Mhm.
know, after 27 years in corporate life. Um, and realizing that I'd always been creative in some shape or form, but now saying this is what I really want to do next is
Mhm.
to make things um, that is exciting, you know. And so that's where my message to people is, you know, it's also in the book. Your purpose isn't a destination; it's a direction. It's
Mhm.
not one purpose for the rest of your life. That's
Right.
my belief anyway. It is always about recalibrating the direction that you're heading in, and seeking what brings you energy what brings you joy, and constantly
Hmm.
figuring out how to follow that and honor that as well.
Yeah. Wow. So many things I want to reflect on, but I just want to say I'm here for it. This next expression, I'm here for the current expression, and like you as a storyteller, you as a creator, um, especially given all that you've already created in terms of teams and organizational transformation and brand purpose. But man, I could see. I mean, the creative voices, I think, of the next 10, 20 years are going to be people like you who have done the inner work, understand the landscape, and have now all these tools to shape the stories that we're going to be living into, because we're going to need some new stories. Like
Yeah.
the old stories around like make a bunch of money, give it away, gone. The old story around, me, myself, and I, gone.
Yeah.
The new stories that you and I have been kind of paying attention to need to be written. And
Yeah.
there's only so much Pixar can do, right? With their medium when they're doing it well. But there's
Yeah.
all these other mediums that need the stories that are in your heart, and so I'm really excited to
Thank you, brother.
to be here
Yeah.
for it.
I'm excited by it too, and it's, you know, I really think about this idea of the moral imagination,
Hmm.
as being the muscle I'm enjoying exploring. And so there's the creative imagination, which is to do with the craft of storytelling. But what stories you tell about how the world sees itself, how
Hmm.
people see themselves, as you mentioned,
Hmm.
that moral imagination is what we need to create the better world that we
Yes.
all want. And so I'm really trying to put those two things together, being an artist of the moral imagination and
Yeah.
thinking about what's missing in the world that needs to be created, whether it's new stories or new, um, you know, media platforms. One of the projects we're working on is turning Good is a New Cool into its own story destination, like its own
Hmm.
digital magazine, whatever you want to call it, which features these stories of inspiring people changing the world.
Hmm.
And so I'm very excited thinking about that path, for the next
Me
10
too.
years, and creating different things in different forms, to meet those needs.
Right on. Well, I think you and I are on similar trajectories, like, because I've also similarly like spent a lot of time in organizations and leader purpose, and like my new project is similar. It's like, how do I create a story of the American people that
Mm,
unleashes our moral imagination?
yeah.
That I think you and I are like we're surfing the same currents of like
Yeah.
new stories. It's story time with Brandon
Yeah.
and Afdhel.
Yeah. And look, I'm somebody who chose to become an American,
Hmm.
right? So I have a Sri Lankan passport, I have a British passport from living there, and then I became an American citizen because I love this country and I love everything it stands for.
Yeah.
And I think that, it is an exceptional country, but it's when you talk about American exceptionalism, I think about all the moral courage moments that this country has had, from World War
Hmm.
II to civil rights to women's movement. Like, that's what makes it exceptional, right?
Yes.
And it's not the strength of the size of the army or the economic power. It is that moral courage that exists in every American.
Hmm.
And I think that's what's really powerful about this moment, is when we've been so stuck in fear and
Hmm.
anxiety and depression and worry. um those are all the things that cramp creativity, that
Yeah.
shut it down,
Yeah.
and the preconditions for having that courage are things like joy and
Mhm.
optimism and fun. you know um I always, when I'm hanging out with my son Nuri and he's kind of a little bit scared to do something, my mantra to him is, fun is on the other side of fear. Like, if you can get through this fear or
Mhm.
whatever it is, I don't know, being on a roller coaster or whatever, like, there's
Yeah.
fun on the other side of this thing, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so that's where the tone matters as much as the message.
Yeah.
And in some ways, the tone is a precursor
Mhm.
to people even being able to access the message. But once it's there, my gosh, there's so
Mhm.
much goodness to be unlocked,
Oh, absolutely.
with everyone.
So, as we move to a close, I would love if you would just share a little bit about this current offering, like helping people connect to their own purpose and how they can learn more about it, pre-order. I know it's coming out in just a couple of weeks or a couple months, right?
Yeah, it's coming out October 29th.
29th.
You can search for it. It is The Good is a New Cool Guide to Personal Purpose.
Mhm.
It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookstore, like so many, all of it. If you go to goodisanewcool.com, you'll be able to see the page that takes you all to these different places as well. It's really, I think I've read every single book on personal purpose in preparation for this. And what I realized was that it either boiled the two types of books out there were either very academic and dense and intimidating,
I've
and
written
would
one of
just
those.
you not no, not yours. Yours is good. I think that just made people just go, I can't understand it. Or they were the other extreme, which is very kind of like hippy dippy and woo woo and cosmic, and people were like, I don't know. So what Bobby and I tried to do with this book was, number one, make it entertaining.
Mhm.
So the first third of the book, as I said, is written almost like a fiction book, where it takes you behind the scenes of the ups and downs of our journey to find
Mhm.
purpose, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, all the drama we had, all the vulnerabilities, the imposter syndrome, all of that stuff, to really demystify the journey and say, listen, if two guys like us could do it, anybody can do it, right?
Right.
The next section is demystifying the topic and saying, what is personal purpose?
Mm.
And really, again, building on the incredible work you've done, really kind of showcase all the benefits around it so people understand what it is. And then the final third is really revealing True's amazing GPS to purpose methodology, the framework. And it turns into something more of like an interactive workbook
Mhm.
where you can, write things down in the book as you go through these exercises with you and, your friends and colleagues, to emerge on the other side. So I'm excited by putting it out of the world. We've worked incredibly hard on to make it simple, fun, accessible,
Mhm.
and even entertaining. And we really hope that everybody, out there who's questioning themselves and their journey, finds it useful as a guide.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I look forward to diving in myself because I know all your previous work. And for those of you out there who are beginning to pull that thread around, like, what is my role in this? You know, do I want to be a co-creator of this world that Afdhel is creating? This is how to begin. Because once you get connected, and that's where that joy is. That's where the fun on the other side of fear is. So I'll be posting the links to all this stuff, to Conspiracy of Love, to the books, to Afdhel's personal pages. If you're looking for a keynote speaker, if you're part of an organization that is purpose curious on that journey, Afdhel's a great person to have in your side pocket to help guide you there. And Afdhel, I just want to again bless you, brother, for all the beautiful work that you've given this world and will continue to give this world. And I'm just here to celebrate you and lift you up. So
Thank you, brother.
blessings to you.
Thank you, brother. Sent right back at you. Keep inspiring us, and honored to come and spend some time with you and chat about this topic and more conversations to come, hopefully.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. You'll find out more about Afdhel soon, and I wish you the best on your purpose journey.